Hey everybody, welcome to week 5 of the class. So congratulations, you have made it past the halfway point. So congrats on that. That's a lot of work. And it's going to be a lot of work moving forward. So hopefully you're able to stick with it. If not, if you feel like you've taken too much on, that's okay. I believe you have till the 28th for this class to drop and still get a W in the class. So withdraw, meaning it doesn't impact your GPA at all. So just weigh that out. I do want to say right now I've been a little on the lenient side with accepting late work, but because of where we're at in the semester and everything that's going on, I will not be accepting late work anymore. So barring any sort of major, really good reason. And just an FYI, I've been busy at work isn't one of those. So you really need to think about the next 4 weeks. And if you feel confident in taking all this on, we're going to have 3 modules this week again, plus you're going to have your test 2. So the second of the 3 big tests is coming up. So I've had people reaching out to me saying, hey, I've been busy, I didn't get to this, I couldn't get to that. You've got to stay on top of this work. It's really important that you do. I know that I'm probably preaching to the choir because some of you are some of the ones that are reaching out to me Thursday night, Friday, saying, hey, I can't get anywhere past the video. So let me just say right now, you're right. From here on out through the end of the class, if you don't get to this welcome video by noon on Thursdays, everything else stays locked. And that's just the way that it goes. I get these things saying, hey, I'm working full time, I've been busy. Working full time, you still have you still have more time in the day. I work full time, plus I teach 2 classes. Plus I have the time to grade all the assignments, create all the materials. There's a lot of work that gets involved. If you feel like your workload is too heavy, then that is fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Lighten the workload. Drop the class, change something else. If the class is super important for the next 4 weeks, lighten up your work schedule. If you can't lighten up your work schedule, figure out where you can make breaks so that you can get the work done, okay? So, again, like I said, you've got 3 modules this week. You've got test 2. Your concert report is coming up due the 28th, so something to be thinking about. Maybe this week isn't the best week to get that done, but we do have work during Thanksgiving week, which is next week, I think. Wow, it's going by so fast. And so you're going to have all this work to do over that. Now, if you look at it and go, man, that's not cool that we've got work due on Thursday, you can get everything done ahead of time. You control your schedule. The only thing that I require is that these welcome video assignments are done by noon on Thursdays, can be done on Monday. Let me say this one more time. I recommend that you have these done on Mondays, Tuesdays at the latest so that you can actually go through the material and learn. You've heard me rant about the importance of learning versus the grade versus the paper, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to keep going over all of that. You know everything that needs to be done. You control your life and how you choose to use the time and have to use the time and all of those things. I get all of that. This is the fun of adult life and all that good stuff. So do the work that needs to be done to get the grade that you want to grade. Again, I've mentioned this in the past, but I can see how much time you've spent online. And so I know those of you that are just trying to do the least amount of work possible. And your grades are reflecting that. And so put the time in if you want to get the good grade. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so this week we have 3 modules, just like we did last week. Last week was a huge week in terms of pivotal game changers. You had the British invasion, both parts. You had America's response to the British invasion. You had the British Blues Revival. And then, of course, you had the chapter on Bob Dylan, folk rock, and singer-songwriters. Lots and lots of important material with important figures. And I will tell you moving forward too, I'm going to get more critical on the grading. It's important that you're using the book. You can ace every assignment in here if you have that book. If you don't have the book, it's going to be really tough. I had people turning in assignments last week that didn't relate to the material at all because they're just like, I'm just going to look it up on Wikipedia. I'm going to look it up on other sites or do whatever. And then you didn't get a good grade because that's what happened. So you could do great in this. Now, what's happening musically here, we just started to see the beginning of it. So we saw rock and roll. We saw that move into teen idol pop. We saw soul and Motown. We saw the British invasion. All of those things happening at the same time. And then you learned about folk music, the history of folk music up to Bob Dylan. And then through Bob Dylan really starting a genre known as folk rock, where basically you combine aspects of folk music and aspects of rock and roll, and then you have this new genre. And what's going to happen moving forward for the rest of this class, and really arguably for a lot of music history, is that it's not really new things coming along. It is the combination of things. So this coming week, you're going to learn about psychedelic rock. You're going to learn about country rock and jazz rock and hard rock / heavy metal and heavy metal. Those are different things. So again, that is a lot of material to go through. So I'm just going to set up some context for you. The reason that I say that is because when you talk about psychedelic rock, there's all sorts of influences that went into psychedelic rock. Psychedelic rock came out in the late 60s, really centered in San Francisco. Summer of so the first human bee-in was January 1967. The quote "Summer of Love" was the summer of 1967. Which was the Monterey Pop Festival. You're going to learn about the beginning. Now, you've already learned about festivals. So sometimes I get people say, well, the first festival was the Monterey Pop Festival. No, festivals have happened for a long time. Remember that the festival that Bob Dylan went electric was the Newport Folk Festival in 1965. So there is a long history. The Newport Folk Festival goes back quite a ways. In terms of the connections to the modern day festival. So when you think about things like, Coachella and other festivals like that, those are connected really to Monterey Pop in 1967, Woodstock in 1969, Isle of Wight in 1970. So you're going to be learning about these festivals. But on the very first page of the psychedelic module, I give you really important dates related to psychedelic rock. Now, it's not everything. That's some of the influences. Those are in the book as well. So you have things like the influence of Eastern religions and Eastern philosophies, particularly Hinduism, Buddhism. And what happened was you had a lot of people that were very dissatisfied. Remember, the Vietnam War is going on. That plays a big factor as well with the draft. People are very dissatisfied with life and as they perceive it from a Western point of view. Now, ironically, if you look at, some people tend to think about wars and the West as though that, but it's globally, right? That history goes without. But we tend to know what we know in the world that we're in. And so people are dissatisfied with that, and so they start looking elsewhere for answers. So they think, okay, I'm gonna not look at Western religion. In fact, a lot of them were following the nihilist philosophies of Nietzsche, who believed that God was dead. There is no God. Therefore, we're going to look at other ways of doing this. There is the existential thought and the philosophers like Kierkegaard and those folks, Sartre, that we're looking at the why are we here? What are we doing, right? So that's an influence. You have the civil rights movement, you have the women's rights movement, you have the sexual rights movement. Again, I mentioned Vietnam War. You have psychedelic drugs. Now, the history of LSD goes back a ways. You'll see the dates on that. But it became, folks figured out how to make it, and that became a big part of things in the 1960s, because the idea was, well, the world that we live in is not good, and maybe there are alternate realities. There's doors to other perception. You can see Jim Morrison and the Doors right behind me. And so some of them believed that there were ways to access these other doors and these other realities through psychedelic drugs. There was... I totally just lost my train of thought as I was thinking about this. Hard thing about, I make these on the cuff, speaking and talking at the same time. So you have the influence of psychedelic drugs. Oh, the Beat Poets. So you're going to learn about the Beat Poets coming out of New York, but then really centering in San Francisco with City Lights, and why San Francisco became a pivotal center and really the epicenter of a lot of this movement. And that the Beat poets, now sometimes I'll get students that they'll refer to the Beats as though they were a band. The Beats are not a band. The Beatles were a band. The Beats were a group of poets. So you have Allen Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti and Jack Kerouac and other people that were exploring life in a new way, reflecting on life in a new way, and really believing that the reason that we have the issues that we have in life is because we are functioning within a certain sort of imposed morality, and that if we were to just live authentically, in other words, you lived how you felt, then you would have the best life. Now, we're going to see that that doesn't really pan out that way, but you can see that that's how things got started. So all of that then led into the San Francisco scene. You're going to learn about the San Francisco bands, Jefferson Airplane and Santana and probably Grateful Dead, the biggest one. You're going to learn about influences down into LA with Love and The Doors. And so you're going to learn about that whole scene. And I want you to pay attention as you're going through that scene to the aftermath of that. You some of you or all of you may be familiar with the 27 Club, which is artists, musicians in particular, that have died at the age of 27. And so Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Jim Morrison all died at that age, sadly. And in a way, they were a product of their time, and their death was a product of their time. So be thinking about that, because you're going to have a possibility to be asked about that. And I really want you to think about these assignments. I'm getting these assignments turned in that, I want to know that you're really processing what you're learning. So you need to not just go through the materials, but think about the materials that you are learning about and how do they apply and how do they apply today. And I'll tell you yet again that if I say, do you see any of blah, 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 whatever, ... in the world today, if you say no, you're just not looking hard enough, because I wouldn't ask you it if it wasn't there. And so, when you say, I don't see any racial injustice today, which literally was said, I don't know that you're either one, not understanding what I'm asking, or two, not paying attention, right? Because there's a lot of it going on. It's certainly in the news every day. So it's important that you're thinking about these things and paying attention to them. So you have psychedelic rock. And then, we look at folk rock, which is the combination of folk and rock. And now you're going to learn in your next chapter, chapter 11 is about country rock and jazz rock. So you can understand what those are, right? Country rock is rock artists influenced by country. Some of the country, the music, the country rock that you'll listen to, particularly in light of what we hear today, you may listen to it and go, I don't even know where the rock influence is. And mostly it was rock guys doing country. Some of it sounded very, very authentic. So you have the Byrds, who ended up bringing on Graham Parsons, who changed the sound of the Byrds with Sweethearts of the Rodeo. And then he ended up having the Flying Burrito Brothers, which without a doubt is one of the best band names ever. And then going solo and working with Emmylou Harris. And then there was Linda Ronstadt. And Linda Ronstadt was from the Stone Ponies, doing kind of a rock thing, and then started to explore this new area. Brought this group of musicians in to back them that were playing around in LA. And out of that, you have the Eagles, and the Eagles really, popularized this thing in a really significant way. So you'll see that going in there. And then jazz rock, where you have artists that are, maybe they were trained in jazz. And this is something to think about. A lot of these musicians that we talk about, I would say probably 95% of them, and that's probably being generous. It's really more like 97, 98, or don't know how to read or write music. That's not required for this. There is no correlation between the ability to read music and being a great musician. And I'll give you a great example. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix couldn't read or write a note, was a phenomenal musician, one of the top in any genre, period. But in jazz rock, what you had was a lot of musicians that were trained, in jazz. Maybe some of them had classical training. We'll talk about that also when we get to progressive rock. And they, and then they wanted to expand. They were really interested in what was going on in jazz, but jazz wasn't super popular, didn't get a big audience. And so they wanted to see a little bit more of the fruits of the rock world and find a way to combine them, get more audience, get more things like that. There's this whole joke of the difference between a rock guitarist and a jazz guitarist is that a rock guitarist knows 3 chords and plays for hundreds of people, and a jazz guitarist knows hundreds of chords and plays for 3 people. Little tough, but there's a kernel of truth in that. And so you're going to learn about that, and you're going to learn a little bit in the module I included. It's not really in the book anymore, but about fusion. And fusion is where you have jazz musicians that were incorporating aspects of rock, Miles Davis being the really the main guy that got that started. So you learn about a few of them and a little bit of fusion. And then you're going to learn about hard rock and heavy metal. And as we start to move up, we start to hit some familiar touchstones, and some of you get happier than others, because you're like, okay, finally, there's some names I know, there's things that I recognize. I do want to forewarn you, though, that to not go into these things necessarily just with these preconceived notions. So if I'm asking you for what are the characteristics of heavy metal, and you're thinking about current heavy metal, you may not get the right answer. You want to listen to the music, watch the videos, read the book and the materials in the module, and really learn from that. So when I always say, if you notice with your discussions and your reflection observations, it always starts off at the very top. It will say, based upon the materials you learned this week, answer the following. So I'm not saying based upon the things that you know, or the things that you think you know, or the things that you think the way they should be. I'm asking you, based on the materials that you learned from, answer the following question. Also, a real quick aside, for the reflection observations, I ask you to paste the topic at the top of it. That doesn't count for your word count, but I ask you to paste the topic because I want you to read it again one more time before you turn it in, so that you can say, hey, am I really answering what is being asked of me? Some of you are still not doing that. I am mentioning that in the comments. I hope that you are all reading the comments. Again, I'm a little disheartened because I put a post out there, and I think it was the last Thursday one, the most recent Thursday one, and I said, how many of you are reading the comments? I think that only maybe 3 to 5 students actually even replied to that, which concerns me in that maybe you're not reading that. And so if you're not reading my announcements, if you're not reading my reminders, then that's going to be hard. Again, you don't have to. You feel like, I don't feel like posting. That's fine too. But it's important that you're reading the comments, because if you're not doing that, then I'm putting a thing in there saying, hey, please do this from here on out. It's not for my benefit. I know what it is. I want you to make sure that you know what it is and that you're doing a good job on it. So hard rock and heavy metal, when we talk about the early influences, we got people like Link Wray with Rumble. We certainly have what is the foundation of hard rock and heavy metal, which is You Really Got Me by the Kinks. So we're going to look at that song again in a different light, as it related to the foundation of being based on riffs instead of a chord progression, using power chords. There's a number of aspects that are in there, and the book's going to talk about that. Again, please don't answer the questions based on just the introduction. You're only going to get some of the information that's there. It's also really important to me that you're listening to the music and watching the videos, so that you can get what the music looked like and sounded like, because I will get comments on things. For example, in heavy metal, people talk about, in heavy metal, there's a lot of low screaming guttural voices and sounds. Later there was. That was absolutely not indicative of the music at this time. So make sure that you're listening to it. Don't just try to go, how little can I get out of this class? Learn from it. This is a fun class to be in. Whenever I tell people I teach this class, they're like, oh, that'd be such a cool class. I said, yeah, you'd think, right? So take the time to learn. I want you to think about the differences between hard rock and heavy metal, because they are there. Some of the differences are in the gray area, but they're there. And you're going to learn about the importance of Led Zeppelin, even though they sometimes were a little bit questionable in their ethics in terms of stealing songs. They were probably one of the most important bands out there. Now, people will tell me sometimes, like, well, the Led Zeppelin is way more important than the Beatles were. You may like Led Zeppelin more, but they were not more important, because if the Beatles hadn't done what they'd done a handful of years early, we may never know who Led Zeppelin was. And so the thing with Led Zeppelin is that they are really the foundation of both hard rock and heavy metal, and you can find the roots of both of those things in this early songs of Led Zeppelin in the first few years there. So you can find all that there, and then you're going to move into the hard rock thread in England, and then as well as heavy metal. And so you get into really the foundations of heavy metal with Black Sabbath, leading into Judas Priest, and then Iron Maiden, and there's some other bands. And the same thing over here in the States. You're going to learn about Alice Cooper, and then eventually you're going to learn about some of the other folks and where that leads to. And it ends with glam metal with like Kiss, and it stops there. And then later in the book, they'll talk about speed metal and thrash metal and all of that. One other really important thing that I want to end this with is if you think back to the beginning of the class, I talked about radio, and that when we were listening to the music on the radio, up until I said some point in the 60s it'll switch, but it's always AM radio. We're now at that point where it switches. So in the late 60s is where you have FM radio come into play, and there's a section in the module about FM radio and Tom Donahue, and FM radio. That switch was massively important to the history of rock and pop music, because AM radio was really pop radio. So if you could have a hit pop song, that's where you would get there. But there was no place on the radio for bands like Led Zeppelin or the Grateful Dead, or Jimi Hendrix, or many, many, many of the bands. But because FM radio came into being, now bands like those ones that I've mentioned and so many more that didn't have to follow into the 2 minute and 50-second pop song format. If there was no FM radio, you never would have had Stairway to Heaven on the radio. It never would have happened. You never would have had a lot of songs by a lot of bands on the radio, but FM radio opened that up. So you're going to learn about that as well, and how that was really a big game changer. So game changers aren't just people, they're also technology. And that's, we could take a whole technological thread through this. As we get into the mid-60s, we're moving from 4-track recordings to 8-track recordings, and then eventually into multi-track recordings. Vinyl stays through. We don't really get to digital and cassettes come in. 8-tracks come in, and then cassettes replace them. We don't really get into digital like CD, and that's early 80s. 83 or so. And so, we'll get to that. But that's it for now. That's a lot of the introduction. I'm trying to help you out here because I really want y'all to do a good job in the class. Again, be thinking about that concert report because it's going to be due in a couple of weeks. My recommendation is to not worry about it this week necessarily. Maybe decide who you're going to do. If you're unsure, please reach out to me and I'll let you know if the artist counts. You don't have to pick something that nobody else picks. It's okay to do that. So it's not like I have a checklist and say, oh, that one's already been chosen by so-and-so. I'm not giving you a list. It's a wide berth. And that YouTube link with the concert report is just a starting place. So just reach out to me if you have questions, okay? So it's going to be a busy week. And just be forewarned. Make sure that you hit this and hang in there. Do good work. You're halfway through. All right. We'll talk soon. Bye.